Welcome back, Thresholds and Transits. My name is Megan. I am happy that you're here. Today we are talking about Mars conjunct Neptune in Aries, the fog that clears the way. But first, before we get started, can you hear? I have a new toy. If you are brand new here, I'm an astrology student and I have been using a lavalier mic that has not been great. It's touch and go. And so I finally broke down and I got a new toy, and it's completely different, and I don't have to turn the whole house into airplane mode in order to record. So here I am. Okay, let's get started. So Mars conjunct Neptune in Aries. Fuck the patriarchy. If that offends you, then this episode and this channel is probably not a good fit for you. Mars and Neptune are conjunct in Aries exact on April 12th, with the energy carrying through the 13th as Mars begins to separate and move towards Saturn. So let's break it down. Neptune entered Aries in early 2026 and will remain there for the next 14 years. It is a generational transit. The last time that Neptune was in Aries was 1861 to 1875, and we will come back to that mode. What Neptune does wherever it travels is dissolve the story, the mythology of that sign. Not the sign itself, but the story the world has told about what that sign means, what it justifies, what it makes inevitable. Neptune erodes the narrative until what was underneath becomes visible. Aries is the sign of the autonomous individual, the self-made person, the hero who acts alone on instinct through sheer force of will, the leader whose strength requires no accountability, no community, no acknowledgement that his power was built on other people's labor and other people's silence. This archetype is not particular to one country or one political moment. It has organized human civilization across cultures for millennia. It is the mythology underneath empire, underneath the divine right of kings, underneath the contemporary cult of the strong man. Neptune in Aries is 14 years of that mythology, that story, losing its form. The way that fog moves through a structure that you were certain was solid and then reveals that it was never as permanent as it looked. That's what this 14 years is about. So Mars entered early Aries this week. Mars is at home in Aries. Its home sign, which in Hellenistic astrology means it operates with full authority and maximum resources. When a planet is at full strength in its home sign meets Neptune, the popular interpretation is that Mars gets confused, that Neptune muddies the clarity of action, and that fog replaces direction. And that's some of what's happening, but I think that that's just superficial. So let's go a little bit deeper. What happens when Mars in domicile at home means Neptune is that Mars becomes the vehicle for that Neptunian dissolution. So the action is spiritualized. The force that Mars is directed towards something that doesn't quite have a name yet, something that transcends individual victory, something larger than any one person's agenda. The warrior, who was always known exactly for what he was fighting for, suddenly finds himself fighting for something that he can't really articulate, something that belongs to everyone, something that the old story of heroism just doesn't have a place for. Externally, the fog of war is visible. The Strait of Hormuz, the question of who has the right to act, of what strength actually accomplishes. None of these have any clean answers right now. And that's Neptune doing exactly what Neptune does. Internally, for those of us who are watching the sky and the world simultaneously, something clarifies. So the vision sharpens precisely because the old story is losing coherence. When the mythology stops holding, when the story stops holding, you can finally see what was underneath it. Before we get to part 2, the full picture of the week, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Megan. I'm an astrology student, and I love to learn and research and look at parallels and pattern recognize about what's happening and what happened before and what is happening. And if you can hear the dog snoring in the background, that's what that is. And as I do that, then I make episodes and I share them with you. I also offer readings, and I have donation-based readings and sliding fee scale readings. So you can find those on my website, meganriley.eu. We have transit readings. A transit reading is like what's happening in the sky right now and how it's impacting you. And we can also look for good days, like good days to move or start a business or get married, and days that to avoid. We can look for that too. And then I have birth chart readings, and birth chart readings are on a sliding fee scale, and they are on the website, meganriley.eu. I also have a membership if you want to stay in touch with me every month, and then intuitive reading. So you can find all of that on the website, meganriley.eu, or below in the description box. Okay, let's talk about the conjunction. So Mars and Neptune meet at 2 degrees of Aries, and that's April 12th. Mars is also making a sextile to Juno at 3 degrees of Aquarius. Juno in Aquarius she's not what we have heard of, the jealous wife of patriarchal mythology. Dimitri George wrote about her in Asteroid Goddesses. Juno is the one that demanded that the structure of partnership be reorganized around mutuality. In Aquarius, that demand that she has extends beyond the personal relationship into the collective, the network, the community, the organization, the movement. The sextile from Mars and Neptune to Juno says that whatever is being spiritualized and set into motion by this conjunction flows productively toward the collective structure built on something other than hierarchy. The work that's being done in communities right now isn't separate from the sky, it is the sky. Mars is also trining the IC, which is in Scorpio. So the IC, the immunum coli, is the root, the private self, the ancestral foundation, the thing that holds everything else up from underneath. In Scorpio, the IC holds what is buried, transformed, invisible. A trine is a supportive, flowing aspect. It is the easiest aspect that there is. What this conjunction is reaching is not the headline, it's what's being seeded underground, in private, the chrysalis that's underground, in the body, in the things that don't appear on any news cycle. This is what's actually changing. This is the astrology of what's actually changing, which is almost never the same as what is loudly visible, and certainly not is the same as what the pop astrologers are yelling about this week. Okay, then April 13th is the activation. So then Mars separates from Neptune, and the sextile to Venus becomes exact. Venus will be at 17 degrees Taurus. She's also at home. She's also in her own sign. She's comfortable. She's happy. She's got the fuzzy blankets. 2 planets at home, Mars in Aries and Venus in Taurus. And in sextile, it's a rare and positive configuration. Venus in Taurus is the body, the sustenance, the earth, what we grow and tend and take pleasure in. She's what makes sustained work possible. And the sextile between these 2 planets is productive in the most grounded physical sense. This is so positive. Audre Lorde writes about the erotic, the bridge between the knowledge of a thing and the doing of the thing. Venus and Taurus sextile Mars and Neptune in Aries is that bridge. The body's knowing meeting the vision that doesn't really name yet. The meal that sustains someone, the creative work that opens up something, the tending of oneself that makes everything else possible. All of these are big, and they are what make the visible action, Mars and Aries, coherent. And then we have April 16th to the 19th, Mars meets Saturn. So Mars moves at approximately 1 degree a day. By April 16th, it's within 2 degrees of Saturn at 7 degrees in Aries. And then the conjunction is exact on the 19th. So the tone shifts at this point. Mars and Neptune is vision, it's spiritualization, it's dissolving of the old story. Mars and Saturn is the demand of what was glimpsed in the fog now becomes durable. Now the structure is built. The endurance begins. The willingness to do the unglamorous, sustained work that outlasts the moment of intensity. Liz Green talks about Saturn as the principle of reality testing, the force that asks whether what you are building can actually stand up. Mars at Saturn in Aries at the end of the week is the sky asking, what are you building from this? We had the vision. Now, what does it become? The last time this configuration existed, Saturn and Neptune were both in early Aries with Mars. Transiting through to activate them was 1861. So Neptune had just entered Aries, Saturn was moving through Aries, and Fort Sumter was April 1861. But the Civil War is not the whole story, and the story of that era is not the whole lesson of this configuration. The abolition movement in the United States had been building for decades before 1861. The legal and moral infrastructure that made the 13th Amendment possible in 1865 was not built on a battlefield. It was built in churches, in printing houses, in the circulation of pamphlets and in newspapers, in lecture halls, in the networks of people who passed information and people and resources along the routes that the dominant culture couldn't even see or didn't take seriously enough to stop. Frederick Douglass published his narrative in 1845, and he spent the next 20 years speaking, writing, organizing. There's no way that he could have known in 1845 that the amendment would pass 20 years later. But he did the work anyway because the work the moment required. That's what was required at the moment. And because the truth that he was telling was true, whether it would be at the heart, whether it would be heard. Harriet Tubman ran the Underground Railroad not once, but again and again and again and again, the same routes in the dark, carrying people that she had never met toward freedom that she already claimed for herself. She didn't lose one person. This is the care that's organized with precision, sustained by conviction that the structure that she's moving through was already wrong. It was already losing its claim on reality, already in the process of dissolution, even when it still had the power to kill. Silvia Federici documents how the devaluation of reproductive labor was not incidental to the rise of capitalist accumulation, but a precondition for it. The work of feeding and healing and tending and raising and sustaining, that work had to be made invisible and unpaid before the new economic order could function. And when that work is done with full consciousness of its value, when it's offered as an expression of what we actually believe about human worth, rather than extracted as the price of survival, it is the direct refusal of the mythology, of the story, that requires it to be invisible. Erykah Badu said, "Creativity is the greatest form of rebellion." I've attributed that to Osho in the past, and I was wrong. This is true. And it is also true that the creativity she's describing is not limited to art. It is the creative act of refusing to reproduce the world as it's been given to you. The meal that's made with attention, the child that is raised to know her worth, the community that's tended through years of unglamorous consistency, the body that is kept whole when the culture is profiting from its exhaustion. All of this is creative. All of this participates in the dissolution Neptune in Aries is accomplishing over the next 14 years. The chaos is visible right now. Men have access to weapons and power, and it's failing them. The mythology of the autonomous strongman doesn't dissolve quietly. It makes a lot of noise. It closes shipping lanes. It builds walls. But mythology losing its coherence is still losing its coherence. Neptune just simply continues to move through it, and the form continues to lose its hold. So do not listen to the pop astrologers conflating the astrology and words like war and nukes and starting to build more and more fear about astrology coming up this summer. It's exhausting. And our nervous system is not built for this long-standing conflation and drama. It is the extended, difficult, necessary process of a very old story becoming unable to hold its shape. And what's being built in the process, in the places that we don't see yet, in the trine to the Scorpio IC, is underground, in the roots. Listen to the astrologers that are not conflating things, that are not dramatizing things. You can tell the difference in the fear that's in their voice and their energy. So what this means for you, the astrology of a generational transit. What's happening right now is not an accident, right? So the Strait of Hormuz closed less than 18 hours after the ceasefire was announced. That's not a coincidence. The Pope being threatened by the Pentagon on the day that Mars entered Aries, same thing, not a coincidence. It is the sky and the earth in conversation, which is what astrology has always been about. So this channel interprets that conversation from a feminist framework. It's through my lens. It means naming what's actually being dissolved, which is not just a political party and not just a government, but the story of power that predates the political parties and predates the governments, all of them, and has organized the structures all of them operate within. That's the story that's losing its coherence. That's the noise that we are living in right now. So your part does not have to be loud. It does not have to be visible. It does not have to look like anything in particular. The person making the meal, raising the child, tending the community, keeping themselves whole enough to continue, all of this participates. All of this is a part of the dissolution. And the story requires our invisibility, and the story requires our weakness and our exhaustion in order to function. So if we are no longer invisible, weak, and exhausted, then the story can no longer function. The sky is asking you to do the thing that you know with full awareness of why it matters. So now let's look by rising sign. I have short little horoscopes for us. Cancer rising. We start with Cancer rising with the Thema Mundi. Mars and Neptune are in your 10th house. Public life, career, authority, what you are known for in the world. For Cancer rising, the 10th house is in Aries, which means Mars is doubly powerful here. It's at home in the house of public standing. Something about how you are known in the world is in the process of changing and being rebuilt. The direction that felt certain might feel less certain now. The work that you've been doing may be asking you to go deeper into its why before you continue with the what. That's Neptune asking the right question at the right time. Then we have Venus sextiling Taurus, and that activates your 11th house, community, collective belonging, the people around you who share your purpose. The questioning that is happening in your public life is in productive flow with what your community is asking you to contribute. The people around you can see something about your direction that you may not be able to see from the inside out. So let them contribute. What this week is asking of you, Cancer risings, is bring the full depth of your conviction into whatever platform or presence that you are building and have built. The meal that you make, the reading you give, the content you create, the conversation you hold, none of these are small this week. They are exactly what the moment requires. Leo rising. Mars and Neptune are in your 9th house, the architecture of belief and philosophy and how you understand the world and your place in it. Something that you have built your understanding around is changing, dissolving, not destroying, dissolving. Dissolution is Neptune revealing what was always true underneath the framework that you were given or built or inherited. This can feel like losing ground. It's actually finding it. What do you really know to be true? What if you took out everything that you were educated into, what the tradition handed you, what the system you work in requires you to believe? What do you know outside of all of that? What in your body, in your experience, what is the part of you that doesn't negotiate with convenience? Venus sextiling from Taurus activates your 10th house. Whatever clarity you are arriving in, your philosophy and understanding is strengthening what you are building publicly. The dissolution in the 9th is producing the foundation for the 10th. So let it happen before you try to build on it. And this week is asking of you, Leo risings, to teach from the dissolving rather than from certainty. The place where your framework is softening and uncomfortable is the most interesting thing that you have to offer right now. Virgo risings. Mars and Neptune are in your 8th house, shared resources, transformation, the places where your life is deeply entangled with other people's lives. The 8th house in Hellenistic tradition carries the weight of what is inactive or difficult for the chart lord. But it is also the house of transformation through contact with what belongs to others, what you cannot control, and what requires you to release your grip. Neptune here is dissolving the boundary between what is yours and what belongs to the exchange itself. So something is transforming. It might include money, it might be inheritance, it might be a creative collaboration, it might be an intimate relationship, and maybe it's grief, or just this very slow process of transforming from the inside someone different than who you were. And what's dissolving is the form that it had before, and what's becoming isn't yet clear. And that's exactly how Neptunian transformation works. Venus sextiling from Taurus activates your 9th house. The wisdom that's being produced by this transformation is real. It is becoming a philosophy. It's a way of understanding the world that you did not have before you went through this. Let the wisdom form rather than trying to stop the process that is producing it. What this week is asking, Virgo rising, is to trust the transformation before you understand it. The understanding comes later. Libra rising. Mars and Neptune are your 7th house, partnership, the people who mirror you, the relationships that define you in relationship to something outside of you. Your most significant relationships are being asked to hold more depth than they have been holding. A relationship that has been operating at one level is being spiritualized to something different. You're being asked to carry a larger truth, about to be something beyond the roles that you have both been playing. This may feel like disruption. It's actually an invitation to a more honest version of the thing. The 7th house also holds open opposition. The person, institution, or system that is directly across from you. Neptune here can clarify the nature of what you are actually in tension with beneath the surface story. So what is the real conflict? What does that conflict actually cost you? And what are you really defending? Venus sextiling from Taurus activates your 8th house. What is being transformed by the depth of your relational life is resourcing something at the level of shared value and shared reality. The deepening of your relationships is producing something that belongs to more than just you. What this week is asking of Libra rising is the full depth of yourself in relationship, not the diplomatic version, the real one. Scorpio risings. Mars and Neptune are in your sixth house. Our sixth house, daily work, body, unglamorous, repeated labor, showing up day after day after day, and the service that doesn't ask to be recognized. In the Thema Mundi, the sixth house carries particular connection to the body and its demands. Neptune here is spiritualizing the everyday, the routine, the service, the thing that you do again and again without fanfare. All of it is being infused with something that extends beyond the individual day or the individual task. The meal that you make is not only a meal. The body that you tend to is not only a body. The practice that you maintain in private is not separate from the larger dissolution that's happening in the world. It's all in at the level of the root. The IC is at 28 degrees Scorpio, and that Mars-Neptune is trining right now. Something ancestral is being activated in your daily work. What were you taught by the people who raised you? What about what work is worth and what bodies deserve? What if that teaching is dissolving and what is clarifying? Venus sextiling from Taurus activates your seventh house. The people that you are in relationship with are being nourished by the spiritualization of your daily work, even when that connection is invisible to everyone, including you. And maybe, Scorpios, we can start acknowledging how we nourish those relationships. Maybe we can be aware of it. What this week is asking of us, Scorpio risings, is to show up. The Mars and Saturn conjunction coming in this next week will demand endurance. Neptune is asking you to locate the version large enough to make that endurance make sense. Sagittarius rising. Mars and Neptune are in your fifth house. Creativity, what you make, what brings you genuine pleasure, the expression that is most fully yours. Creativity is the greatest form of dissolution, not because it's loud or visible, but because it refuses to reproduce the world as it was given. Every act of genuine making is a departure from the inherited form. Every time that you make something that did not exist before, you are participating in the process Neptune in Aries is accomplishing at the generational scale. Your creative work is being spiritualized right now. What you are making is reaching towards something that transcends individual expression, even when it feels personal. The song, the essay, the reading, the meal, the conversation, something larger is moving through it. Allow it. Venus then sextiles from Taurus, and that activates your sixth house. Daily practice is in productive flow with the creative vision. Your work is not sustained just by inspiration. It's sustained by you showing up, by the body's knowledge of what the work requires, by the discipline that holds the space for the vision to arrive. What this week is asking of Sagittarius rising is make the thing. Just do it. Just make it. The conditions are perfect as they are right now. Capricorn rising. Mars and Neptune are in your fourth house, the foundation, the private self, the root system that holds everything visible above ground. Something at the foundation of your life is changing, dissolving. It might be literal about where you live, about what home means, the structure of your daily life. It may be the story that you told yourself about where you come from and what that means about who you are allowed to become. Neptune in the fourth arrives as kind of like a a homesickness that doesn't resolve into a destination because it's pointing towards what has not yet been built. The dissolution of a foundation feels more destabilizing than the dissolution of anything else, because the foundation is supposed to be what you do not have to think about. What Neptune reveals in which parts of your foundation were genuinely load-bearing and which parts were decorative. Venus sextiles from Taurus, and that activates your 5th house. The creative act is building the new foundation, even while the old one is losing its form. So make things, plant things. The 5th house is where you discover what you actually love and what turns out to be the real foundation. And this week is asking you, Capricorn rising, is to tend to what is at the root, the private self, the home, the foundational care. It's the primary work of this week, and it's what the visible work will stand on. Aquarius rising. Mars and Neptune are in your 3rd house, language, communication, the written and the spoken word, the local networks through which information and meaning travel. Your voice is being spiritualized, what you say and how you say it, and it is being asked to carry something larger than just information. The post that opens something is the person reading it, the conversation that shifts the whole room, the sentence that names what everyone felt but no one found words for. Neptune in the 3rd is clarity about how to communicate. It's the expansion of what communication is capable of doing. And Juno sits in your 1st house at 3 degrees of Aquarius, and Mars and Neptune is sextiling her directly. Your identity and your voice are in productive flow. Who you are in the world is being expressed through and deepened by what you are willing to say. Venus sextiling from Taurus activates your 4th house. What you are communicating is rooted in something embodied, something private, something that has ground under it. The words are clear. They come from the body, from the foundation, from what you really know, instead of what you've just been told to say. This week is asking you, Aquarius rising, to use the voice you have in whatever register and whatever reach to name what is really happening. The dissolution of the story of the strong, silent individual leaves space for the person who's willing to speak. Pisces rising. Mars and Neptune are in your 2nd house, resources, material security, what you value, what you own, the question of what it takes for you to feel whole. Your relationship to resources is being transformed at a level that goes beneath the practical. Neptune in the 2nd is asking, what do you actually value? Not what the culture tells you to go after, not what you learned in childhood was the measure of safety, but what you really need in order to live the life that is yours. The question that is being asked right now is with some urgency. And the moon is at 2 degrees of Pisces in your 1st house, which is your body, your instincts. The moon's sextile to Juno in Aquarius reaches into your 12th house, the private and hidden. The spiritual practice that operates below the surface, the body that knows what this moment requires. The deep knowledge is not in analysis, it's in the gut. It's in the knowing, what you notice yourself moving toward or away from before you have a reason for it. Just trust that. Venus sextiles from Taurus activates your 3rd house. How do you speak about your value, what you ask for? How do you price your work and your time and your knowledge? This is in productive flow with the material spiritual questioning happening in your 2nd house. So the work of naming what you are worth is not separate from the larger dissolution of the story that profits from your uncertainty. So get clear. This week is asking you to say it, the value, out loud, in writing, how you move through the world, not as a negotiating position, but as a truth. Aries rising. Mars and Neptune are moving through your first house, your body, your identity, the self you are present to in the world, and the self that looks back at you from the inside. This is the most personal expression of a transit that is also collective. The fog that is visible globally in the story of the autonomous strongman is also moving through your personal self-concept. So who are you when the story that you've been telling about yourself stops being sufficient? Neptune dissolves what Aries depends on: clarity, identity, certainty, the knowledge of exactly who you are and what you are here to do. This is going to be uncomfortable. But what's dissolving is the version of you that was built for a world that is gone. The part that had to be singular and certain and unambiguous. What's left is, when that dissolves, is substance. It's the complexity that was always there underneath the clarity. The version of you that's large enough to hold the contradiction and the uncertainty and still act. Venus sextiles from Taurus, it activates your second house, what you value, what actually resources you, what you need to keep going. The embodied answer to your Neptunian question of identity is not philosophical, it's practical. What do you need? Rest, nourishment, time alone to hear your own signal? It's what makes your sustained action possible. And then Saturn is coming into your first house. So the vision that you are receiving now will need to become a structure. So note what you're being called toward, because you're going to build something around it that lasts. Taurus rising. Venus is in your first house, at home, herself, and she is sextiling Mars and Neptune in your 12th house. The 12th house in the Hellenistic tradition is the house of what is hidden, what operates beneath the surface, what cannot be seen from the outside. Valens wrote in the anthology, he associates the 12th with what is concealed, with grief, with the things that do not appear in public life. But the 12th is also the house of spiritual practice, of the work done in private that no one is watching, that has no audience, and that is done just because it is real. So something is emerging in you in private. It could be a conviction, it could be a creative impulse, it could be a calling that you haven't said out loud. And it might feel too big or strange or uncomfortable to really expose yet, but this is what's working in your 12th house. So the spiritual warrior in you is forming in the hidden. Venus in domicile in your first house is your body, your pleasure, your fully expressed presence in the world. The sextile between your visible self and your hidden activation in the 12th is the connection between how you appear and what is driving you beneath the surface. Let the private thing feed the public presence instead of just hiding from it. This week is asking you, Taurus risings, to give the private thing more space. Give it room to grow. The practice that no one sees, the work that's done just because you're passionate, the thing that you're becoming before you're ready to talk about it, that's this conjunction waiting for you. So trust the forming and allow it space. And Gemini risings. Mars and Neptune are in your 11th house. Community, collective endeavor, the networks you belong to, the groups that share your purpose. The Thema Mundi places the 11th house as the house of the good daemon, associated with Jupiter and what is fortunate. What is being spiritualized in your 11th house right now is the nature of your belonging. The communities that you're a part of are being touched by something larger than their stated purpose. Something is being seeded in the collective that you are a part of, something that will not be fully visible for some time. Venus sextiling from Taurus activates your 12th house, private, hidden, the practice that sustains you from beneath the surface of your public participation. The connection between your private spiritual life and your collective participation is what this week is revealing. The restoration that you do in private is what makes your presence in community possible. They're the same loop. And what this week is asking of Gemini rising is to tend to the community that you are a part of, with full awareness that what you are doing in private sustains your capacity to be present in public. The personal and the collective are in conversation. Mars reaches Saturn April 19th. When Mars arrives at Saturn in Aries, the vision that Neptune offered this week becomes what Saturn asks of it, something durable, something that can be sustained past the intensity of the moment, and something is being built. The abolitionists did not see the end from the beginning. Frederick Douglass did not know in 1845 that the amendment would pass 20 years later. He wrote the truth anyway. Harriet Tubman did not run the same routes again and again and again because she knew that it would be enough. She ran them because they were the routes that she knew and the people needed them. The skies this week is offering the same kind of clarity about what you already know how to do and why it matters to do it now, why it will continue to matter for the next 14 years as Neptune moves through Aries and the mythology of the self-sufficient strongman loses its story, loses its form, and disappears. The old story makes noise when it is dying. It has access to weapons and shipping and codes, but the story losing its coherence is still losing its coherence. So do the thing that you know that you need to do. The roots are deeper than the noise. See you next time.